everyone. Good evening and welcome to our monthly near-death experience support group meeting. We welcome family members, seekers, and students of the NDE. We're honored by the choice you made to join us this evening. My name is Tina Angeli. I'm an experiencer. I'm also one of the 3 facilitators of this group. I wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Bethany Silver for her expertise in technology and all the extra help she provides, and her efforts for making an online meeting support group possible. Okay, the upcoming speakers is in April, and it's Krista Marie from California. In March, I guess I had forgotten that Bethany said that you're going to have the steps, the 4 different steps for March, right? And so that's that. Well, I want to thank Peter Panagore for sharing your second NDE. Thank you, Peter. We're going to start by, in order to avoid individuals from monopolizing the speaker's limited time for questions, there will be only 1 question limit per attendee until everyone has had questions. The meeting will conclude promptly at 8:30. Anyone wishing to continue to share with each other may remain. We ask that all attendees mute your audio, and when Peter concludes his sharing, it will be open to answer questions. Thank you, Peter. Please begin.
Hi, Tina. Thank you. Hi, Felice. Saying hi to folks I know. I see other folks I've recognized, Dana, and let's see, I lost Robert, of course, Glenn, and everybody else I said hi to before. So, hi, I'm Peter Panagore. I live in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, and I live in an isolated rural area purposefully so that I can be immersed in nature when I step out my door, because I find it helpful in my NDE life. So, and I live here. So, where do I begin? I'll go back and say that for those of you who heard my first near-death experience, there are elements, but few elements, that overlap in my second. My first one was in 1980. My second one was of a heart attack in 2015. So heart attacks run in my family. There's a congenital thing in your 50s. If you make it through your 50s and you've got some medical assistance, you got a pretty good chance of sticking around for a while. But my grandfather died of this. My sister, who was part of my story last time we spoke, my sister who had run away and vanished, she died of this. And my dad would have died of this in 1987, I think it was, had they not life-flighted him from his home in Marlborough, Massachusetts to UMass Med-Worcester and shot him up on the helipad with an experimental decoagulation drug. So, family history. But so I spent much of my life trying to be fit. So I was 20 years as a vegetarian, stopped that when the kids weren't eating vegetarian anymore. But I was a runner, yoga, all sorts of stuff. So here I'll begin my story. I went down to Cape Cod to visit my parents, and I went for a run. They live on the bike trail. If you know the Cape at all, there's a bike trail that runs up the Cape. They live in South Dennis. It runs right behind their house, and so right behind their neighborhood. And so I went on a run through it crosses over into this preserve, and I ran 3 laps of this mile track preserve. Beautiful. And at the end of it, I was like, wow, that was a terrible run. And I didn't feel very well. But I thought, I don't know, bad day. I went home. I went back to my parents' house. I got in my car the next morning and I drove back here to Boothbay. And my intent, I was on vacation, and my intent was to go sailing. Someone had loaned me a Rhodes 19 permanent. It's like on a permanent loan to me, and it was hanging off a mooring ball on Ocean Point, which is a mile from where I live. And I was going to go sailing. And I've sailed my entire life. I sailed by myself most of my life. And so I get down to the dock, and it's so foggy I can't even see the boat. It's like super thick fog. I was like, uh-oh. And I was coming home also to be on granddad duty. My granddaughter was part of this story, and and I only had a couple of hours before I was back on duty again, happily, but it's still on duty. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to yoga class. So there's a yoga community in town, and I mentioned when my little talk ahead of time here that I spent most of my life practicing yoga, but I purposely didn't learn any of the names of any of the positions, any of the asanas, because I didn't want to teach anybody, because I was a Christian minister, and I didn't want to reveal what my interior prayer life was. So I went to this yoga class where I'd been going for 5 years as Vinyasa Flow, and I know the teacher. She's my favorite teacher. And it's a Saturday morning, and the place is crowded with tourists. It's August, and it's a Saturday in Booth Bay, and I know a bunch of people in the room because I live in a small town, so I know like 3 or 4 women in the room, and then there was this one woman in the room who was my summer neighbor from down the way here, and but I got there late, and Romy, the teacher, said to me, because I'm her friend, that I could set up, and literally in the doorway. So there's the doorway. She opened the door. I put my mat, so I'm like half in the room and half out of the room on my mat, and it's hot in the space. And she likes hot yoga at this point. And I begin my yoga practice, and I break out in this sweat. And I'm like, I haven't been exercising long enough to be sweating. Why? Well, why am I so hot? And I thought, I don't really feel well. So I just lay down on my mat in Shavasana on my back, and I'm lying there, and I'm sweating more and more and more. I was in downward dog. It's like, get into downward dog and begin your vinyasa flow. And I was like, this is too much. I don't even know what's going on. So I was lying there for a few minutes, and after, you may remember from when I was younger, I was on the National Ski Patrol. When I was living on this island off the coast of Maine, I was in the ambulance corps. So I was an ambulance attendant and first responder. And so I'm lying there on my mat, and I'm like, I'm having a heart attack. My heart is hurting. It's not getting better. But I thought to myself, my grandfather and my dad and my sister, they weren't fit at all. So I'm going to be fine. And I didn't want to disrupt class. So I just got up and I walked out of the yoga studio. It's on a ground floor. It's a small building. And I go outside and I sit in the chair for a minute. And I thought, sitting in the chair is not very comfortable. There's the dew on the green grass. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning. So I lie down on the dew and the green grass and under the shade. And as I'm lying there, I'm feeling this pain get worse and worse. And I think, I really am having a heart attack. Oh my God, it's my day. I get to go home today. This is the day that I've been praying for my entire life. This is it. And I'm like, who knew? I was like, oh, I could have been out sailing. If I had been out sailing, I would have been one of those guys whose boat ran aground somewhere, or his boat ended up in Portugal. Like what happened to Peter? And oh my God, he died on the boat and all by himself. What a crazy guy to be out there sailing alone when he's got a heart condition. But I didn't have a heart condition. I didn't know that I had a heart condition. I mean, I suspected, but it didn't show up on the tests the year before. So I'm lying in the grass and I'm thinking, today's my day. I get to go home. And then I thought, my wife, she knows. I've been telling her our entire marriage that the first chance I get to die legitimately without killing myself, I'm going. No offense, I love you, but I've got my beloved. I have a beloved already, and it's bigger than the universe. And so I thought, okay, she'll be fine. And I started thinking about my kids. I was like, my daughter, she had just come back. My daughter had married her high school sweetheart, but it turns out this kid was bipolar and brilliant, could do calculus in his head, dropped out of college. He joined the Marines. He went to Afghanistan. He was in the midst of very, very terrible things that happened to him over there. Very, very bad things. Some of which made like the front page of newspapers kind of things. And he came back extremely broken, moral injury, they call it. And they were still married, and trouble ensued. There were arrests and violations, and they were in love, and they went off, and they ended up in Florida, and it became clearer and clearer that although he wasn't abusing her physically, that there were terrible things going on. And so she got pregnant somehow. I don't even, haven't asked her, why'd you get pregnant with this guy? I haven't asked that question. And we rescued her. We rescued the baby. If the baby's born in Florida, according to Florida law, neither parent can move out of the state until the kid's 18. No, they can't the kid can't leave the state. So we're like, let's have the baby in Maine. So we drag her up here. We get the baby born in Maine, and she goes back, and months go by. This is in February of the same year that I'm talking about. And by July, it's over. And now we're in this interstate multi-family rescue of her and bring her back up to Boston, where somebody gives her a free apartment for a year. And in Arlington, for all you Bostonians, on Revere Street. And but the baby was born, and she's trying to figure out who she is, and I'm lying there thinking, I can't really, I have to at least try to live. So I thought, I'll get up and I'll get to the urgent care center. We had a hospital in our town forever, but it was swallowed up by a major hospital, and then it left. And it left that year, and it ended up as an urgent care center. And it's only a mile away, and I decided to drive myself, and I tried to sit up. And as I sat up, my heart was like a elephant. Like, here's Ganesh back here. It was like Ganesh was standing on my heart in tree pose, and just like, and I was like, oh, I can't even get up. And then I thought, I am going to die out here. But then I thought, all these women, it was like 90% women in the studio, and one guy, and it's like, all these people are going to come out, and they're going to find me dead out here. That's going to be hard on them, but that's okay. It's my day to go. So it's like, this is the circumstance I'm in. I get to die today. I'm going to go. And so I just resigned myself to dying where I was. And at some point later, I had my eyes closed, and I was controlling my pain because it really hurt. I was using my meditation to control my pain. And we talked a little bit about meditation, and Glenn knows this because I've talked about this before. There are techniques in meditation where you can learn to control your pain. And it's not like you're imagining that you're controlling your pain. If you're actually in severe pain, you can control your pain so you rise above the pain. And so I sit in this what's called a zafu and a zubaton. And the zafu is a little pillow, and the zubaton is this little futon mattress. And I sit in a Zen style with my feet folded underneath me and the cushion tucked under my butt. But what it does is it eventually hurts my feet. And so, and as I'm meditating this way, my feet start to hurt. If I look at the pain, if I move my breath in my mind to the point of pain, I rise above the pain, and I can witness the pain and not feel it. And it's a natural biological thing that you can do with practice and meditation. It's not hard. You just have to have something that hurts and have the time and the breath to focus directly on it. So I'm lying there meditating, keeping my pain under control. And Romy, the yoga teacher, who's adorable, she comes out, and she's German American. And she's like, Peter, what are you doing? I said, well, Romy, I'm dying. And, I'm having a heart attack. And she said, what? No, you can't be having a heart attack. Like, look at you. I was like Mr. Fit. And I said, no, Romy, seriously, I've been lying out here, I don't even know how long, a half an hour, and I'm dying. And I think I should probably get to the hospital, but I can't get myself there, and she can't leave the class. I said, so go in there and get Michelle, who's this summer neighbor I mentioned. And she's there with her daughter, who I know, and the grandparents I know the whole family, did the wedding, all this kind of stuff. And she comes outside, and I say, oh, she's also, I could tell you what she does. She's like this super powerhouse brain financial person too. She's the stellar human being who can do everything she's ever wanted to in her life, because she's just that kind of person. And she comes out, and she says, what's going on, Peter? I said, well, I'm dying. She's like, no, you're not. You look at you. You're not having a heart attack. I'm like, yes, really. And I need to get to the hospital now. I don't know how long I've been out here, 30, 40 minutes at this point. And I know that I only have 1 hour. So in a heart attack, you only have 1 hour before damage sets in. And it's called a golden hour. And I said, you got to get me to the urgent care center. And she said, well, why don't we call the ambulance? I said, I've been out here for 40 minutes and they're 3 miles away and there's nobody at the station. They got to get to the station and then they got to get in their gear and then they got to drive down here. I'll be dead by then. And so I talked her into driving me. So they carry me over, Romy and Michelle rather, they carry me over to Michelle's car and they drive me to the urgent care center, which is a mile away. And I called ahead and I know everybody there. I'm like, hey doc, this is Peter Panagore. I'm having a heart attack. And he's like, what? No. I'm like, no. He said, if you're really having a heart attack, you should drive up to Damascotta, which is 30 miles up the river. It's the hospital that consumed our hospital. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to make it. I'm telling you right now that this is what's going on. So they meet me at the doorway and I know all of the nurses. Some of them had been in my youth group and some of them were their mothers. And then, so it's just like this town gathering and they carry me in. Everybody's very concerned. They give me an x-ray. They find that I have 100% blockage in my widowmaker. And the doc's like, okay, we got to get you to the urgent care, to the catheterization lab in Portland. It's a Saturday in the summer, in August, in Maine. And Portland's an hour and 20 minutes. The hospital's an hour and 20 minutes from there. Well, it's an hour and 20 minutes from my house. It's an hour and 10 minutes from there on when there's no traffic. So by this point, I'm already well past my golden hour. And the doc says, we'd like to give you an injection of this drug to give you maybe a trickle through of 3%, that it might just be enough. So I was like, okay, give me this shot. They give me this decoagulant. And he says, I want to give you morphine for the pain. I said, no, I don't want morphine for the pain. It's like, why not? And I said, because I've had morphine before for other injuries and it makes me vomit. So I'm going to be in the back of this ambulance where I'd spent time. I know that the diesel smell and the ride in the back of the ambulance can induce nausea. I'm like, and I'm going to be on, no, thank you. I'm going to meditate. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, that's what I've been doing this whole time. When you're not talking to me, that's what I'm doing. I'm in this space because it hurts a lot. So meanwhile, my wife shows up and my son, who's now 30, this is 2015. So he shows up and daughter's somewhere, I don't know where she is, but my son comes over to me and I'm on the gurney and I'm being wheeled into the ambulance and my son, and he comes in really this close to me, looks me right in the eyes and grabs my hand and squeezes my hand and says, I love you, Dad. And I look at his face. One of the things about NDE, for my NDE, like people talk about after effects of NDE. One of the after effects of my NDE is I see into people. Like, I can't tell you your psychic past, but I can see who you are. And I can see what you're feeling. If you lift that veil, that I can see that. And it's not like I trained to see that, I just see it. And so my son's leaning in on me and I see all of his confusion. I see all of his wounds. I see his suffering. I see his love for me, his anticipatory grief for me, all the stuff inside of him. And I feel it coming from him. And he, the doc pulls him away and I'm being wheeled out and my wife's next to me and she's holding my hand and I look up at her and like, well, honey, I'm out of here. I love you guys, but I already know I'm outside the golden hour. And so I smile at her and wink and off I go. And I'm in the back of the ambulance and they got me all wired up and hooked up and stuff. And they get the siren going and the lights are flashing and we're rushing. And I can tell initially when you meditate, you're not unaware of your surroundings. If you can hear stuff, you can, if your eyes are open, you see stuff. My eyes are shut, but I can still hear stuff and feel stuff. And so I'm still trying to keep the pain at bay with my focused meditation on my heart. And we're in the ambulance and we're somewhere between Boothbay Harbor and Portland. I don't really know, so there's this peninsula that we have to go up. It's a one lane street. And then there's Route 1 that runs along the coast. And then 30 miles later, yeah, Damascotta is 30-mile round trip, and the highway is 45 miles away. So it's 45 miles before we get to the highway, and then I think we're on the highway, and we're kind of cruising along, and I'm just meditating, but I can hear, and I hear the paramedic get on the radio, and she calls in, "This is so and so, we've got this and this guy, and this is the vitals." She'd been talking to the hospital all the way along anyway, and she says, "We're losing him." And so I open my eyes, I look up at her, and there she is. She's looking down at me, and she has fear on her face, like, and she's the only person in the back of the ambulance. There's nobody else back there helping her. And so she's alone, and she has fear in her face. But as soon as I look at her in the eyes, she is like instantly into professional. Like all of that's gone away. And now she's encouraging, she's got the encouraging face on. It's going to be okay. But I know that's not true. And but as soon as I look at her, my pain comes back immensely, and so I've got to go back inside because the pain is immense. And so I go back inside myself. I close my eyes, and as I go back inside myself, I am not inside myself anymore. So I am in the tunnel that's sort of above myself, my physical body. But my physical body isn't me anymore. I am this being of light again. I am this energetic body that has kind of a shape of Peter, but and connected to Peter still, but I am not the physical body at all. And I know who I am. I know where I am. I know what's going on. And I'm like, oh yeah. And as I'm outside, and there's like this cavernous darkness where my body is. I can't see the ambulance. Some people are like, I float up and I can see the paramedic, and I can't see any of that. I'm inside the darkness. And as I'm inside the darkness, I hear my name being called, the same name that echoes inside of me my whole life, this unspeakable. And I turn toward it, and down the tunnel, down this trajectory toward me is the same orb of consciousness that came to collect me the first time. And I know this consciousness, and it's speaking to me this time as it's downloading to me non-linguistically, telepathically, no words. It's in the plural. We've been waiting for you. It come home to us. It's your time finally. It's like you've had your fun time. Now it's time to come home. And it approached me, and I didn't get enveloped by it as I did the first time. I was sort of in parallel with it. And so I'm kind of in parallel with it. If I had a hand, maybe I was holding it. So I was like touching it, but I had no physical form. And as we're going up this tunnel, I'm thinking to myself, and it's a being of conscious light. Only this time it's not like overpowering me. It's like sweetly welcoming me, kind of thing. And I think to myself, well, wait a second, this is a very different experience than the last time, and I know what's going on, so I'm not confused. I think, okay, wait a sec, I need to check. This is so sudden that I need to check to see if everything's okay before I go. And so I detach, and I turn around, and I sort of put myself back into my memories, into my brain, but I'm not in my body. I'm still observing from the outside. And I see my son. I see his face. I see his confusion. I saw everything that I saw when he was present to me. And I also saw that his unpreparedness for the loss of his dad and the shock it would be to the change in his life. And then I saw my daughter, and this turmoil with this guy who, for all I knew, was going to be dangerous. He'd had weapons charges on him already. And then I saw, and I was like, she needs me. And then I saw the baby, who's now going to turn 8 on Wednesday, but was less than 1 year old now. And in this story, and I saw her parallel lives. I saw her without me, no man, father figure that was solid in her life to be loved by. And I saw her with me, and I saw this special relationship with her. And I turned around, and my wife didn't enter into this. My wife, I was already people, when I started telling this story the first time, even to my family, they're like, what about mom? I was like, mom and I had a deal. Mom already knew what the deal was. We'd already, it was all right. Mom wasn't there. And I turned around and I went back out of myself, and this angel, this consciousness, had receded, almost like politely turned its back. And as I came out, it came rushing toward me again, with this big, huge, sweet welcome. And as it came to me, I said to it telepathically, I know timelessness. And if you just give me a minute, I'm going to go live the rest of this life so I can be there as I'm needed for my granddaughter, for my son, for my daughter. I don't know what this guy is going to do, but I know that they need protection. They need me. There's not going to be anybody else who's going to be there to do this. And so I sort of told it that that's what I was going to do. I'm turning around and going back inside, but it acquiesced. And I turned around and I went back inside. And the next thing I know, I'm in the catheterization. I'm being wheeled into the hospital, and the doctor, with a collection of nurses around him, checkboard, they're talking to me, and he's like, "He didn't give any morphine." I'm like, "No, I haven't had any morphine." He said, "You're awake?" I said, "Yeah, I'm awake. I've been meditating." He said, "You've been meditating?" I said, "Yeah, controlling my pain. That's how I've been doing it." He said, "I've never heard of such a thing." I said, "Well, I just took a ride from Booth Bay, so and no morphine." And he said, "Well, we should give you morphine." I said, "I don't want any. I can't take any because it's going to make me sick." I said, "Do I need it for the surgery?" He said, "No." I said, "You can do the surgery without giving me any painkillers." She said, "Yes." I'm like, "Will I feel anything?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay, let's do it." So they roll me into the operating room, and they do a catheterization up my arm, and they go inside my heart, and they poke around, and he's talking. And I can hear what he's saying. "Well, there's a couple of moguls in here, and there's this thing. There's the blockage." And they go in and they I don't know, it was an angioplasty or a ram or something. I don't know. They cleaned it out and they put a stent in. And then he's like, "Oh, there's damage. Oh, look at that. Oh, so he's like, you got a lot of damage in there. And I'm surprised you're even here." And so he pulls this thing out, and I go off, and now I'm in what they call in Maine the SCU, which is the ICU anywhere else. So I'm in the SCU, and I'm still not on any pain meds, and they're still offering me morphine, and I don't know how many hours I'm into it, but it's finally like 8 or 10 or 12 hours of mental focus to manage my pain when I couldn't take it anymore. I was exhausted, mentally exhausted. I had nothing left. So the thing about the meditation with the pain is that the pain can drive the meditation. There's nothing like learning to keep your hand out of the fire by letting your hand drop into the fire. And when your hand drops in the fire, you just lift it back up and you just keep it there out of the fire. And so there's this meditation practice that kind of drives a person to stay out of the pain. And so, but by this point I was exhausted, and I asked for something, anything other than morphine. They're like, "Oh yeah, we have something." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me this freaking 5 hours ago that you had something else?" And so they give me this, whatever it is, and it knocks me out. And the next morning I wake up, and I'm in another room, by myself. And in the room are people I know, as my family is there, and doctors I know and nurses I know, because I'd been the minister in this hospital, and plus Portland's a small town too. And so some of the doctors I know, and some of the nurses I know, and people are showing up, and I say, the first thing I say is, "I died yesterday." Before I was like, "Hi everybody, I died yesterday," and my son. So I tell the little story, and my son says to me, "Dad, I said goodbye to you." That's what I was doing. The doctor said, "Your dad, he's going to die on the way. There's no way around it. Too far out from the golden hour," before I even left the urgent care center. So I said, "Yeah, I told him, it's like, I saw you, and I thought you weren't ready for me to go." And this is when I first told my story, and they're all like, "What about Michelle? What about your wife?" I'm like, "Well, we already had a deal." And she said to me, when I said this, she says something like, "Yeah, I was already making plans." I already had this. I was like, okay, this is it. I've got to get organized. She's super organized. She's like always like got her thing going on. And she said, and now you're here. What am I going to do? Like, I give up your plans. I don't know. And then in the middle of all of this, it's 2015 and my book's coming out in a month. And I've got to be in New York City in 9 weeks for a morning show for Fox and Friends. And I know, well, you take the gig that they offer you. So I went, and which propelled it. My book launched at number 76 at Amazon, which was fabulous because of this show. But I was like, I got to be in New York in 9 weeks. And so the doc says, but you have damage. You can get to New York maybe, but it's going to take you a year at least, and you're never going to be the same again. And it turns out that that's true. I've got like a governor on the top end of my heart, but I worked my tail off to get fit again and get strong again and all that kind of stuff. But I'm lying in the hospital bed, and the phone rings. My phone rings, and it's a TV station. I work in yeah, maybe I didn't tell you this time. Maybe you don't know. I worked in television. I had a show for 15 years on main TV, where I had 2 minutes every morning during the morning news to tell an inspirational story. And it's the vice president of the TV station on the phone. And I like this guy. I like all these people at this TV station. It was a really great place to work. And he says, we've been purchased. I said, yeah. He said, well, they're going to cancel your show and we're going to ease you. I'm lying and I'm like, in my hospital bed, we're going to ease you out of your show over a year and a half and do it very gently. And you can't tell anybody that this is going on because we can't damage our brand. And I'm like, you guys have been the best to me. And you've been the best to our show for 90, as it turned out, 91 years at the end. I said, well, I'll never damage your brand. You don't have to worry about me. I will keep your secret. And so as I was lying in my hospital bed, my financial world fell apart and didn't know what I was going to do. And clergy have cooties. I don't know if you know this. Clergy have cooties. Whenever I was a minister and people would ask me, they didn't know me what I did for a living, I would lie. I wouldn't not tell the truth. I would say something like, I do a lot of like social work and I write a lot of things and I do some public speaking and I do some counseling. I wouldn't not tell the truth, but as soon as I said clergy, they would stop swearing in front of me, or they would back away, or they tell me that Jesus was their best friend. And so every single one of those scenarios was dangerous for me socially. So I just kept it to myself. But living in a small town and now in the state where everybody knows I'm a clergy person, I'm like the most famous clergy person in Maine. I know nobody who, when I went looking for work outside of the church with all of my skill sets, nobody would even talk to me because I have cooties. Religion is a taint in the professional world. And so I tried to figure out what to do, but I came back different. Every single mystical experience that a person has is, and I mentioned this earlier on, it lodges wisdom inside a person. It could be just a small amount, but that small amount is made of the same light as the divine. So it's really not a small amount. It's actually a large amount. It just might seem small to the person who gets it. But if you learn to focus in on that gift, I don't just mean like remembering it. That's part of remembering the experience, but bringing your mind and your breath into that feeling of that space, that's where the gift is that grows the spirituality of a person. And so every mystical experience that I've had, and I've had these 2 NDEs, but I've had a half a dozen or more other kinds of mystical experiences that have been not equally powerful, but very powerful. In every single one of them, I've been reborn. Every single one, I come back a different person. Jesus talks about being born again. I'm in life 3.2 probably, and in life 2.0, I was in life 2.4 maybe, and in life 1.0, I was in life 1.4 1.4 before my NDE. And every single one of these individual experiences lodges this wisdom inside a person and changes them. So I come out of the second near-death experience a different person. And I become the last mystical experience I had previous to this event. I became finally integrated in the world. I'd not been integrated in the world till probably 2013 from 1980, like balanced in the world. And so finally I'm balanced in the world, and now I have this NDE, and I come back finally ready to not hide anymore. And I'm ADHD. I've been that my whole life. I'm dyslexic. I've been that my whole life. I learned to mask these things very early on. I masked with my social life because my sister vanished, and I had to learn to keep the family secret in public, even from my cousins. So I would mask, and then I learned to mask as an ADHD person, and as a shaking my leg all the time. I had to stop shaking my leg. I wasn't allowed to chew pencil caps or whatever else I was doing with fidget toys to keep my mind focused. And so I masked as an NDEer. I masked the entire time. I kept this a secret. By this time, this book was coming out, and I got talked into writing this book by these people and these TV people in New York. I was prepared to finally tell the public truth because I had become integrated. But after this sudden death at the same time the book was coming out, I came back all in. I'd never really been all in before. And so I found myself all in, and I had this year-long recovery where I couldn't work. And so I dove deeper into my meditation, and I dove deeper into my yoga, and I looked for work. But nobody would hire me because I had cooties. And then I started looking in the church, but the church was darkness to me. Everywhere I looked with my inner eye, all I saw was darkness for me. And so I'm going to swing back and end here. So I'm out in the Meadow, what's called the Meadow Mall in Boothbay Harbor, which is this strip mall with a parking lot in front of it. And another one of the yoga teachers is there. And she says, Peter, when you come back to class, because I was going to two different studios because, everybody's a friend of everybody. And I say, well, Sharon, I'm not coming back to yoga class. She said, but you have to come back. We miss you. I said, well, I love you guys, but I'm practicing on my own now, and I need to practice on my own. And she knew this about me. We'd been friends for 20 years, that she saw me 1,000 times practicing by myself. And she said, but we need you to come back. I said, Sharon, I got my thing going on here, and I wasn't quite as tactless as that. She said, but you don't understand that when you're in the studio practicing your yoga. So whenever I'm in these yoga studios, I practice along with the vinyasa flows that they're doing, whatever they're doing, but I actually do my own thing. And they don't care if I fall out of rhythm with the class. They let me do my own breathing. All these teachers just let me do my own yoga. And she said, when you're in class practicing, the entire radiance of the room changes, and everybody knows it. Everybody wants you there because they feed off of you. And so when I began my yoga practice back when I was in the autumn after I died in 1980, when I discovered the chi, I may have told this part of the story last time, discovered the chi. I was in Marcel Marceau's students mime class, and Marcel Marceau taught hatha yoga as part of the mime practice. And I found my chi. I decided for myself, this is where I discovered the Yoga Sutras and Paramahansa Yogananda and began my interior practice. I decided I was never going to speak about it. If these chakras are real, and they felt to me that they were, if I could, I wouldn't need to know any of their names. I wouldn't need to know how they worked or what anybody believed about them or what color they were or what sound they made or anything else, because they have a physical energy. And if I could learn to live inside that of the physical energy and open my chakras and move my prana and enliven myself, I might be able to survive in the world. And I might be able to show people what I knew even then that I couldn't say. And so I swore to myself back then, and my wife didn't even know what I was doing in my yoga. I didn't tell anybody what my practice was. Nobody knew. Because there was no point in telling anybody. Because if either they might think it was like no point in telling anybody about an NDE because they might think you're crazy. So I'm practicing learning to enliven my chakra energy to share Shakti. What does even that mean? So Sharon told me that everybody felt it in the room. And then at some point in that summer, that next summer, my wife was out of town somewhere, and I went out to dinner on a rooftop bar, and my physical therapist from another previous injury was sitting next to me with a bunch of her friends, and she says, "I don't think you remember me." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're my physical therapist," and they all know me from television. "Oh, you're the guy on TV," and I don't remember how it came up, but she said to me, she suddenly turned to me and she said, "Well, Peter, everybody knows you glow. Everybody does." Like, oh. And then it happened again. And when it happened the third time, I thought to myself, well, maybe finally I can show instead of tell. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to show and not tell. I'm using telling, knowledge, understanding, mysticism, language, poetry, words as a vehicle to help people find what I know is real inside myself. And the deeper I go into this place, instead of trying to find my balance in the world, I could never find my balance in the world from the day that I died. I was dislocated in the world from my very first mystical experience when I was 5. I was already like topsy-turvy. But after I died, it's super intense. And I've came to the conclusion through my reading that there's only one place that I'm ever going to find balance, and that's in the very center of my being. And maybe I can learn to balance between these two worlds. And if I aim at this world, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I aim my entire self at the other world, at the heaven, at the divine being. And in this process of giving myself over to as much as I can in my meditation breaths and my living of my daily life, the more footing I have in the world. So this paradox, when I give myself away, I find myself. When I look for stability in the place, the ethereal place, the numinous place, I find my footing in the physical place. And so it's just the opposite of what I would have thought was going to be true, except for this is what the masters teach. This is when, the great masters, the mystical masters of the history of the world, they all teach about singleness or oneness, or Buddha calls happiness. They're all talking about the stillness. They're all talking about the same pivot point inside ourselves, and that this is the natural state of our being laid over with these masks of our necessary existence here. And so my second near-death experience set me back in the world with nothing to lose. I could lose my family. I could lose my finances. But in terms of my actual self, the one that I know from my previous NDE is just temporary here anyway, I'm never going to lose that. I'm growing that. It both set me more deeply and firmly footed in the world, but it also conversely set me further apart too. There's this after effect of non-attachment that is beautiful and destructive. It's beautiful because it's the true self, and it's destructive because that doesn't quite fit in the world. And so I find myself, and I really am gonna finish up here. I find myself at odds. I'm at odds with the Christian church because they totally don't understand Jesus at all. Not that I was, and I stopped being a believer the day that I died. God had no religion. God is unitive love. But the poor people, they don't understand it. And as I'm speaking, I become The mainline church doesn't like me so much, and the evangelicals don't like me at all. And then the more new age people who are working to manifest their dreams in the world, totally fine. But this place is completely temporary. Why are you wasting your time when you are actually an eternal being, that this is a temporary way station? The perspective of knowing who I am, where I'm from, has had financial and personal implications that have compounded the longer I'm at this. And I'm okay with that. Others are less so, understandably, because they're living more physically in the world than me. NDE isn't simple. It's not just flowers and peace signs and love. It has other implications in the world, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I would wish the divine presence on everybody. The growth of the divine inside yourself brings heaven to you, brings heaven to me. This is my life has been an experiment, and I'm the subject of the experiment. Can I grow enough emptiness inside myself to be a larger receptacle for heaven beyond, for the light within, for whatever you want to call it, and then live inside this bubble of delight? And I do, and I am. And I wish it for everyone. And I know that we're in this time period where there are more mystics in the world because of near-death experience, sudden mystics. And the more we talk about it, this is a safe place to talk about it, which is why I'm telling you all these personal things in detail. And the world wide web of light grows stronger with every single one of us that finds the light inside ourselves. And since half the population of the world has had some kind of mystical experience, most commonly a visitation from the dead, an after-death communication, there's a whole ton of types of mystical experiences: shared death, out of body, divine. There's a list of them, and I think there's a lot of people in secret and hiding. I'm not the only one, and I want to help people find their voice, and I want to help people find, more particularly, the light inside them. And so I'll stop here. I could go on because I got more to say always, but if people have questions. I see 2 raised hands. Hi.
Laurie.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for coming back to visit us and share your second near-death experience with us. Can you hear me?
I can, Laurie. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, Peter. I too had a heart attack, and I drove myself to the hospital. And I was walking into the hospital, and lights were going to go out, and I was hanging on to the person with me. Then they got me in an EKG. They said, "You don't look good." So there wasn't a bathroom in my room. They said, "How do you feel?" I said, "I need to use the bathroom." They said, "You okay?" So I went to walk to the bathroom, and on the way back, no, the lights were going to go out. I had the catheter for 2 blocks in one artery. I watched them save my life. I was awake. I didn't have any medicine. I recovered from that. It wasn't my near-death experience. My neardeath experience, and I don't recommend driving yourself to the hospital.
I have done that with a broken bone before.
My near-death experience was from toxic mold exposure in my home. So I was very, very sick. And after my NDE to the void, which was very short, I came back not feeling like I belonged here. For 6 months, I had 1 foot here and 1 foot there. And I remember walking down the path where I healed for 2 years and feeling like I was going to die again. And I got my phone out to call 911, and I looked up at God, And I said, if you're going to take me now. And I put my phone back in my pocket and kept walking. I'm still here. He didn't want to take me. So, just what you've talked about, the meditation is absolutely incredible. I'd like to learn more about it. And I'm going to get your books and read your books because I believe that you have a lot to share and a lot to give. And I'd like to receive some of that. I'm so glad that you made it back here for your family. I'm still here, but I need nothing from this earth like you. There's a disassociation. So what I do is I help people, and I've had some really, really bad experiences lately where I'm tired from my soul from helping people. But I'm driving home from work the other day and I'm saying, Lori, the light is love. Love is the light. Be the light and the love for others while you're still here. And today I took such a beautiful ride to a beautiful place and restored my soul so that I can continue to help others. But I'd love to learn your meditation techniques, and your story is just amazing. I appreciate you sharing it with our group. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Laurie. I'll talk about those meditation techniques toward the end of our time, and I can hang out afterwards to get more into it.
Dana, your name came in first before Greg. Go ahead.
Hi, just a question about what you had mentioned about your daughter. You could see during the NDE, her with dad, her without dad.
Or with me or without me, not
Correct.
her dad. Right.
Yes, yes. And this brings back an inkling that I had in my mind this week, and it reminded me I felt I had to say that and to ask this question today. Are both of those realms, with dad, without dad, exist at the same time? And they can.
Yes, they were parallel when I
Is
saw
there
them.
more than one of you, Peter?
Well, yes, I think so. Which one I chose to live inside of was the one that I'm living in now. Her world would have been, I wouldn't have been here. She would have lived a different life. And so her timeline shifted as a result of my choice, as did my parents and everybody else's the last time I had this choice. Why I have a choice, I don't know the answer to that. But having been in a position to see simultaneous incarnations in my first NDE from basically 2 points of view, I understood that none of those incarnations were actually me, and they all seemed to exist at the same time.
Yeah, okay.
And so is it like the multiverse in the DC I think it's DC Comics with Doctor Strange and this last movie where he breaks apart the universe and there's all these different universes interacting? I don't know whether there are other Peters and other universes because I made this choice, maybe, but what I know for sure is that I'm none of them, that I am always this other. I am my higher self and living inside a physical form.
This is the same question, just for clarity. When one manifests, say, something in their life, say a new career as an example, are we moving from one dimension to the other, but they both still exist?
Well, you mean if you turn left at this corner instead of turning right and you're on the left-hand side, is there another world that goes off to the right-hand side?
Yes, absolutely. That's my question.
I think so, because
I think so too.
Because when I was first coming back from my first NDE and I had all these millions of doors to choose from, all these lives that I could live back in this physical body, they all intersected with each other. I had all these tunnels were all connected, and they're all based on the choices that this me was making, but they all existed. And the choices that I make in my life create the projection of the trajectory of the possibility for the next choice.
You have cleared up so much for me. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dana. Greg?
Let me help you, bud.
Hello. So I remember reading some of your stuff, and you felt conflicted as part of the clergy, because you felt like what you were talking about on Sunday mornings did not really clicked with your experience. Not at all, right?
Well, some of it did here and there, but mostly no.
Okay. I mean, okay. And that's what pushed you to do the not church as an alternative.
Well, a little. There's a little more to the story than that because I signed a contract for my book to become a movie, and so I've been working on that, and I'm going to
Okay.
keep and finally, I found a little tiny church near Gloucester, Massachusetts. Anybody know Cape Ann? Little tiny town called Annisquam. Well, back at the turn of the previous century, when Swami Vivekananda came to the United States to speak at the Chicago World's Fair, he spoke in one location in the United States before he got there, and it was in this little tiny church in Annisquam. And so they have this long tradition of the association with Vivekananda's tradition. And they were looking for a minister, and so I went, and it was perfect. It was the north end of the Purple Line. My wife was from Boston. She's from Boston. Wants to get back to the city. Wants to live in the city, but I could live next to the ocean. It was this perfect little place, sailing in ocean, and hop on the train and be in the city in half an hour, and plus there was a major science lab there that was interested in hiring her, and so I got to the point with the conversation where, and I thought about this. I thought, I think I could work with these people. I think I could bring them into my thinking. They seemed very open-minded, in order to that I could experiment with talking more truthfully about because now I've got a book, and now I'm out in the open as a near-death experiencer, and it'd be the first time going into a church like that. And in the final negotiation on the phone, and right here in this spot in this room, I said to them, I have one last thing I need to tell you. I signed a contract for this movie, and I'm going to continue to work on it. It'd be great for the church because it'll bring people in once the movie's made. And they're like, no effing way. You can't have two masters. You have to only work for us. And they yanked it out from underneath me. And then I had a similar experience in North Conway, which is a wicked great ski town in New Hampshire. And when they found out I had a movie, they yanked it out. Both of those churches looked like darkness to me when I looked inside them for myself, like I was being trapped. But then after that happened, after those two yanked outnesses, I decided, and I was only looking in a church because it seemed like the professional thing to do. This is what I'm good at. Nobody else is going to hire me. I was a good minister. I was good at being a minister. Like I crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. It's a job I was good at, and I could do it again. But then these two things didn't happen, and because of this movie, and I decided, all right, now I'm going to do it on my own. Let's see if there's a niche for because I know I'm on the outs with most of the like, I don't try to manifest anything in my life. I mean, maybe I work hard. I have goals. I try to achieve but I don't try to like magically manifest anything except for heaven. Just this one intention. That's the only thing for me. And so that kind of sets me out. I can't tell you how to manifest a cat. You want a black cat? I can't tell you how to do that. Good for you if you can. There's no reason not to do that, except for that for me, it's doesn't connect me to my ultimate self. So I started Not Church as a way to find community. Not Church is a vehicle for Mystic Tea Salon, which is a vehicle which is our conversation on Sunday mornings, which is a vehicle for our Tuesday morning group, which Susan's going to. So I had this plan in my mind to see if I could create a place to discuss mysticism in the public square, and then to discuss mysticism in a private place of real experience with people with real wisdom who've actually know what they're speaking about because it lives inside their hearts. And then from that group, to see if I could create another group that could. Someone's got their mic on. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was my wife talking to my kid.
Oh, that's all right. So,
off,
to try to teach what I was talking about before we started recording, which is this: that you don't need me. that if you find this divine energy inside yourself, this prana, this chi, this, and you feel it, and you use your mystical experience that you've had that's already transformed you as a focal point, you will expand in this and bring heaven channeled into your own life, or whatever you want to call that space, bliss or paradise, or healing. The kind of healing that it brings to me, it's like that saying that says pain is inevitable, but pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. It removes the wound. It doesn't stop the pain, but it removes my suffering. And it makes me less reactive to the world. When insults or slights or aggression come my way, it makes me respond without anger. It creates the treasure in my heart of peace, and I like to build a reservoir of peace inside myself. And I practice building this reservoir of peace inside myself with every breath. As I sat in my church contract, I had it written that I had to have time to meditate and do yoga. And and they're like, why do you want to have that? And I'm like, well, I'm the minister. I need time in contemplation and prayer. And they're like, okay. So I built into the structure of my professional life the thing that I craved and needed. And now what I'm trying to do with this mysticism, not church, is figure out if I can teach what I've learned about the practice of Kriya and Kundalini and chakra without ever having learned the language of how to explain it. Because I didn't want to reveal myself to the church and slip up with language that wasn't Christian. And they're a progressive church. Okay, this isn't an evangelical fundamentalist place. This is like the in Boothbay Harbor. It's the place where the CEOs and the retired professors come to. It's the very social justice oriented. Work a lot with the homeless and the poor and the abused and all that kind of stuff. Just great. It's what they should be doing. But not a mystical mode in their bodies. At least the one that they ever showed. Turns out that probably 50% of them had mystical experiences, but never wanted to show it because it was embarrassing. Other comments or questions? You got more, Greg, there?
Been there, done that.
Who said that?
Yeah, well, I'm reading the name of the next person that has a question.
Oh, been there, done that. I see that.
Oh, sorry about that. That's me.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me. Okay. I'm new to this this format. Hey, Peter, thank you very much for sharing everything today. And actually, I just went onto your website and joined, and you might send my contact information to you.
Thank you.
And I have a sort of a pervading question that I've been unable to answer, at least to get some clarity on. I won't go into a very lengthy background story. I always try to make it short, but it never ends up that way. I would just say I had a pretty tumultuous life, but I had a profound the only thing I could call it is a Kundalini awakening. It happened when I was getting sober during that process and going through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, where, I sat down to meditate after I hadn't meditated in probably 15 years. I had taken transcendental meditation in high school, and it benefited me in high school and college. I've always had a belief in something greater, or a God or a divinity or something. I was never very comfortable in what I would call traditional churches. I was raised a Presbyterian. Oh, I'm sorry, Episcopalian. I'd gone to a Lutheran school. I mean, I had dip my toes in the Bible, but it never really I wasn't comfortable in it. But there was nowhere else for me to go to maybe try to either understand God or know God or connect with God. I guess that's the way I would put it. And then when I was on this beach, I remembered my mantra. I was beyond the ends of my ropes. And, my looking back now, that was 24 years ago. I don't even recognize that person who became an addict. And I wanted to believe that God could help because I tried everything else. Anyway, what occurred was I sat down, I started to repeat my mantra, and then all of a sudden I had this explosion of brilliant, soft, white, misty light in my brain, consciousness, awareness. I'm not sure where. It's the only way I can describe it. And then an energy that started what I now know to be my root chakra. Back then, I heard the term chakras, but I never knew really what they were. But it started there, and then it was coming up the center of my being, exiting out the crown of my head, and it was like this water going through a pipe. And as it was doing so, it acted like a scrub brush or a cleanser. Like it took away everything that was not of its very own nature. And so all of a sudden I got to experience what I believe or want to believe, the nature of the divine, which or Christ consciousness or what have you. It was a force and power of love that defies human comprehension. And I had these sort of, like you were talking when you were sharing with us, these downloads, I guess would be a way of saying it, or a telepathic communication, or a knowing, or it was just information that was transferred to me. And it wasn't the spoken word, the written word. It wasn't a voice in my head. It was this weird form of communication. And it revealed itself to me, where I got to this sort of information of its nature that bowled me over. It was the most amazing, profound feeling I've ever felt. And then I was given a message, but it was outside of the sphere of this divinity, but it was part of the divinity. Because of that experience, I immersed myself morning, noon, and night in the consumption of books, spiritual books, mysticism, you name it, and I absorbed it all. And then I've had a number of spiritual experiences with profound mediums that are trance mediums, and I studied the work of Swedenborg and Edgar Cayce and Dr. Peebles and a myriad of things. And I traveled to places. I stayed with a direct disciple of named Norman Paulson, who lived with and studied with Yogananda. And
I know that name.
Yeah. And I'm getting to my question, but just to preface all of it, because of what I experienced and what I believe, and then plus what I've heard in near-death experience, is that when people transition or during a near-death experience, they go home. They feel like, oh, I'm home. For the first time, I feel like I'm home. And they experience the profound love and beauty, wonder and joy, and just this wonderful thing. And through my readings and studies, and even in some novels and books, whether it's by Emerson or Whitman or others, and in psychology, it would be Carl Jung in particular, but the concept of the higher self, the true self, right? So I'm analytical, unfortunately, but I like to know things. I like to learn, and when one has a profound experience like that, where you have nothing in the physical world to compare it with, you like, I mean, when somebody says, well, what was it like? And I'd say, well, do you love your daughter? And they say, yeah, of course. I said, well, take that love and multiply it by 300 trillion billion gazillion to the power of 150 million, and you might get close to what I felt. There's no comparison. So, but in this knowing of a higher self and knowing that we return home, my question is, if we are already that and a part of that, and essentially God in a way, then why do we come here? And and if we come here and that's our real nature, that's who we quote unquote really are, because my drive, my goal, everything else has been, I look as minutia, right? Earning a living, daily chores. But what that showed me was that love is the most important thing there is, period, bar none, end of statement. And if I have, and not if, I have a higher self. And so if I want to bring about that within myself while I'm in the human flesh. Now that might be like a really tall order, but I can't shake it. So why do we come here, Peter, if we already are that?
Well, that's a big question. First, if love is the end all and be all, why worry about the question why? Why not just be in the love itself?
True.
That's one. And there's this rabbinic saying that says, what's the one thing the unlimited can't have?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What is the one thing the unlimited with a capital U can't have?
Well, my guess would be physical form.
Limitation. And so if the unlimited creates limitation to experience itself. When I was dead, I realized that a lot of people talk about this world as a schoolhouse. When I was dead, this schoolhouse is like a kindergarten compared to the super advanced graduate doctoral program that I was in when I was dead. I knew everything I needed to know. There was no space for me not to know anything I wanted to know. So as I lived my life here, I wonder about
now you can.
all I'm trying to do in this life is be a channel for the light itself. That's it. And my purpose isn't so much, I have a mission. I knew that when I came back, I was going to be, the first time I came back, I had this job to do that I didn't want. I was like the most reluctant person for this. I didn't want to do this thing. Like Jonah. And, but I came to find that nothing else satisfied me but the thing itself. The answers that I find in books, they're all, the most important answers I find in books are directive on how to be, not what to do.
Yes, true.
And so I don't try to trouble myself with trying to answer the unanswerable question of why I have existence. I find the reason for my existence in the light that I share with others and the love that I can give in my limited and imperfect form as a human being. I definitely make mistakes in my relationships. And I'm not always at my best, I'm just a human being. But one of the things that I learned when I was dead is that all of the love that was given to me in my life, all the love that people gave me in my life before I died, all of that love came with me. Those people in the form of their love came with me when I died. And all of the love that I gave to those people came with me too. And it was the lens through which I could hear the divine speaking to me. So maybe, this is just a maybe the wages of a life lived in light is the ease of the passage between here and there, and the maybe next incarnation, maybe I don't have to have a next incarnation. Maybe I can just stop incarnating in human form and start, which my soul is continuing to do anyway. It's my soul is like part of my experience is that I'm always in two places at once. I'm always traveling closer to the light uh, as my soul self. And so maybe in my death, after this death, if I accumulate enough wages, if that's what the deal is, that I get to not come back here again and only aim for the higher levels of heaven. Maybe that's what it seems like to me when I think about the other mystical experiences that I've had. But like that's the why are we here is very similar to why do we suffer, and why do we suffer? Well, that's because it's limitation. Why would God make a place that's so broken? Because brokenness can't exist in the divine presence. It's not like it won't exist. It's like it can't exist. The only place that this place can exist is here. And when I was dead the first time, when I went through my life review, I saw my life from the inside of the other people who saw me living. I lived their experience from their inside. The divine is inside of everything there is, experiencing the entire world through us, but it's masked over by these veils. And if I'm really like, I'm not so interested in my past lives. I haven't done any past life regression, not because I think it's not valuable to people, but because none of them were me. They're always something that wasn't me. And so all of my pursuit of this unitive state that I've been after since I tasted it, and I've had a similar been there, done that with, and I say that in sort of a punny way, within my samadhi experience after I died. I came back and I had a similar experience to what you had, where nothing that is not the thing itself can exist. That's the union state. That's the state of enlightenment that then leaves you somehow in pursuit of it, but also leaves you at a loss, because you know this thing is real and you don't have it anymore, and yet it's this thing that's driving you forward and that's what suffering does for us. Suffering is this breaking of ourselves in order to allow this. Rumi talks about where the light gets in, but without the brokenness, we don't have the capacity to break through the veil without it. So this whole, which is then comes back to the whole divine seeing itself in its limitation. So when I see the light in somebody else, I don't see the light in somebody else. The light sees itself. When I feel the divine energy flow between people, that's not me really feeling it. It's the divine being the flow itself. So why am I here? Individually, I'm here to help my granddaughter, and my help my dad die a year ago, and I'm trying to help my mom now, and helping my granddaughter. That's why I'm here. Existentially, it doesn't matter a single bit. Me, human being, in the history of the universe, the size of in the space of it, my life is nothing. It's nothing in the solar system. It's nothing in the history of Earth. With all the billions of humans that have ever lived, or hominids that have ever stomped upon the earth, my life is when, and people will say, no, it's important. Well, not when civilization, when human beings are no longer, they evolve out of being human. Who's going to give a shit? Nobody. It's so, and I'm okay with that because I'm not these things. So I live my life without asking why I'm here, because I can't answer the question except for in this minutia, for my mom and my dad, and for my daughter and my granddaughter, and what I saw when I was dead, that I'm the divine experiencing my life, and multiply that by billions of lives, not just Earth lives, but billions or just Earth lives, birds and dogs and crocodiles and dinosaurs and other star systems and other life forms and planets, and it's so much bigger than us. And so in the practice of the end of false self, the practice of aiming toward the singularity, of dissembling the egoic identity, not to such a degree that you can't function in the world, but to such a degree that there's not attachment to this functioning anymore, then that question goes away.
Yeah. Well, there's some other things I'm going through health-wise, which is definitely in the way of a lot of different things. But I just thought I'd bring forward that question because it's something that I've pondered. And, I have touched upon, because when I was younger, I didn't have the tumultuousness in my psyche that I have now. And when I went through a lot of different, seminars and retreats where after a 5-day one, which was with Tony Robbins, and we were asked to say goodbye to our, people that were in the room we'd spend 5 days with, to put our right hand on anyone's heart to say goodbye, and they would do the same to us.
Nice.
I remember I had placed my right hand on this woman's heart. I'd sat next to her for 5 days, and instantly when I did that, everything disappeared. It was like I felt like my true self had returned. This Bruce that had been lost for so long returned, and I started weeping because I realized that the person in front of me was me, and there was no chatter up here. There was no comparing. There was none of that. It was just all disappeared, and I just cried because I had so much love for this person in front of me. And that happened with every single person in the room. And, that lasted for a couple weeks. But when you taste something that's so glorious, like you had said, everything else pales by comparison. And I guess, Peter, in truth, to end this so others can have an opportunity to ask a question, I've just wanted to be like Christ or any of the avatars or anyone else that's graced this planet that live in a space of unconditional love and compassion for everything, everything around them. They just live in a state like that. So anyway, thank you very much. You were fabulous, and thank you for having a discussion with me. And I'm going to bow out and let others.
Thank you, Jane, please, and then Felice.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for coming here. I too was raised in professional Christendom.
Professional Protestant, were you? Or
I was a professional evangelical.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I even went to the mission field. I mean, yeah, I was serious. And my brother's a pastor, missionary. And yes, I went through it too. And I found that, of course, there are mystics hiding out in evangelical churches.
Yes, there are. They're everywhere.
And, where they're really hiding out is in the 12-step programs. There are so many closet mystics, and you can't really talk about it there. So that's my background. So how do I bring this up to people, which I have to be very careful with. And I'm very, very, very careful and reserved and not saying much. But I kind of let people know. I drop hints. And can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I can hear you.
Yes. Oh, you're frozen now.
You might want to get rid of your video. Oh, she's gone.
Okay. Felice, are you there?
Hey, Felice. Long time no see. Oh, we get Jane. Jane's back.
Okay, Jane is back.
Sorry, I have a really bad connection tonight, and I keep losing you guys. But the one thing I wanted to why are we here? I work with guides, and they told me, at least for me, and I don't know if this is true of everyone, but they told me, we're here to evolve spiritually. It's kind of like what you were talking about, Peter, with, this idea that at some point we stop reincarnating and move on to something else. And that's exactly what I was told by my guides, that yes, we do keep coming back until we're ready. We've reached the point where we move on to what's next. I don't know quite what that is yet, but yes, that is what they tell me. And I have been connected to past lives, and I was never interested. I didn't know I had them. I didn't care, like I wasn't
You're an
interested.
evangelical. Even if you did, you would never say so.
Oh yeah, but I wasn't. I didn't care, but when I reached a point of where I started connecting with my guides, that's what they started showing me, was my past lives. Now I've learned that what's happening now with me is like I'm integrating the people I was in the past. And they had tremendous knowledge, abilities. I was always a shaman in all of my past lives. And I remember my NDEs, they were not with Jesus. They were with my Norse and Celtic ancestors. I met Odin, I met Freya, I met Tyr, Thor, all those people you hear about. And they are actually my ancestors, are the ancestors of the Germanic, Norse, Celtic people. And that's the information they gave me, and I hope it can help people. So
It helped me just now.
oh, good. Good.
Very good. Okay, Felice, are you there?
I'm here. It's a little, yeah, I'm here. Hi.
All right. Hi.
I just love you and am so grateful, Peter, for the words, the language that comes through to give voice and a language that can touch the all of it, the multi-dimensional layers and an expansiveness, and give a glimmer and a taste. And what I find when you speak is the resonance in the experience as much as words can express it. And I'm so deeply grateful for that and for who you be in the world. Truly.
Thanks, Felice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bethany?
Thank you so much, Tina and Peter. So moving. I just so cherish your sharing tonight. I just want to let people know that I'm going to stop recording so that because we're a little bit past our 8:30.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop recording and just want to express my gratitude. And it's so resonant with everyone here for the incredible wisdom that you share with us tonight. Thank you.
Not my wisdom.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
True. Yeah.